Okay, in step number 162, we're going to put all the clay nose weight in. So there's an entire stick of clay, and we're going to break it up into chunks and then drop it in, and then we're going to take a dowel and smash it down all the way to the tip. So this is pretty easy to do. Just be careful not to knock off your fins at the same time, because they're still on kind of loose right now. We're going to be putting fillets on in the next step. Okay, step 163. Now we're going to take the forward bulkhead that we had made previously, and we're going to test fit it into the nose cone, push it in. Need my dowel again until it's in as far as it will go. This is where it stops right there. You can also take a pencil and go on the inside, see if you can get it a line around there. And we're just drawing a line so that we know where to put our bead of epoxy. Yeah, I can still see my line. It's just barely in there. So now we're going to epoxy this in. But before we do that, we want to make sure that we don't get any epoxy on the shock cord. It just makes it brittle. That makes it easier to snap. So we're going to wrap it up. We're going to kind of encase it in paper towel. So this is just to protect it from getting epoxy on there. So now I'm going to slather it up with epoxy, and also we're going to, in step 164, apply epoxy fillets to fill any gaps in our fins. While we're mixing up epoxy, we can do this all at the same time. We don't want big fillets for these because it's not scale. So basically we just want to fill any gaps. So for this, I'm going to take some tape and put it right along the edge of the fin. And I'm leaving like maybe 32nd of an inch along my fins where I have a gap. So if there's any excess epoxy, you can peel it up. But you got to do it while it's still in its green state. So that side looks pretty good. So I'm going to go ahead and tape this up, mix up epoxy, and then we'll come back and we'll put epoxy everywhere, and we'll finish up 163 and 164. Okay, I've mixed up my epoxy. I'm using a thinner epoxy here that has a little bit longer working time. Any epoxy is going to work fine. The purpose is to just seal the gaps underneath the fins. So you're not looking for like super strong or anything like that. We just want to get those gaps filled. And I just wanted a little bit longer working time. But if you're using a 5-minute epoxy, just mix small batches and just do a fin or two, then mix up a little bit more. Because with a 5-minute, you're just not going to have a lot of working time. Also have some alcohol ready for cleanup. What I always do for fins, there's a music wire piece in the kit, and I'm just going to take it and get some epoxy on there and then just wipe it along the fin. So I'm not putting too much on. You can see I'm skipping a lot of areas there. Alright, so then when I get it on, I'm going to really press hard and smash it into that corner to seal that edge. And any excess epoxy I'm going to wipe off. And that looks pretty good. Now if there's epoxy like on the fins, and if you want to take it off, just get a little bit of rubbing alcohol and you can use that to wipe it off. It just saves you from having to sand a lot later once it's dry and once you go to paint it. So I'm going to go ahead and do that to all the fins. Then the bulkhead itself, again, I'm just going to slather up the edge here. I'm going to put it on a little bit thicker. And I'm also going to do these vertical streaks. Okay, so this is going to go inside of here and push it in. I'm going to take my dowel and smash it down so that it is as far in there as I can get it. There's a little bit of epoxy on the inside edges. Clean that up. It's not too critical. There's nothing else that's going to go in here except for the parachute, and that's not taking up a lot of room. Now you can come back and put a fillet down there at the bottom. It's actually a good idea. I'm going to wait until I get all my fillets on the outside before I do that. So that is step 163 and 164. In the next one, 165, we're going to start the boat tail portion of the rocket, which is a lot more fun. Okay, we're on step 165, and it says to use this razor saw and cut the boat tail ends off in the grooves. So we're going to cut right back here and right here. Again, you can either use a razor saw or a hobby knife to do this. Kind of score around the perimeter to get it started. All right, and then we're going to take some sandpaper and we're going to clean up the ends. That end's not so important. It's this end down here. This is the side you see. This is inside the... Okay, so now step 166. We're going to clear out the slots. Some of them still have tabs in them, so go ahead and clear those out. Okay, and then we're going to sand the surface so that everything fits flush. So again, just sand those slots down where they kind of stick up. This slot down here, this is the one that you might see the most because it is the slot for these small fins. And these other slots are hidden underneath the big fin, which is pretty wide. But these small ones, they're more exposed. Step 167, there's this partial tube coupler, and we laser cut it. And this is going to be used to create the access hatch on the upper stage. For right now, we need this piece. It's kind of a rectangular piece. And then if you look closely at this transition, you'll notice that along one of the slots, there's an etched line right there. So if you go around, it's only in one spot, and it's not the seam line, there's an actual etched line. And so we're going to take this coupler here, and we're going to use it as a doubler, and we're going to put it just to the right of that little etched line. So this is going to be glued in place. And what this does is it reinforces this area, because later we're going to drill a hole through it. And this plastic is fairly thin to keep it light, so we have to put this doubler there. We're just going to glue it in place with some medium or thick CA glue. Okay, so there's my etched line. I don't know if you can see that or not, but it's very fine. And this goes right along there. It doesn't have to be perfect because, like I said, it's just a doubler for one hole. It's a hole for a rivet. So we're just reinforcing this area of the coupler plastic. Step 168, we're going to take the engine mount assembly that we did previously, and you notice that the rings are still lettered. So we're going to slide this in. And we want this last ring, CR3, to be flush up against the edge of the coupler. So what we're going to have to do is going to have to sand down these two inside rings down here to adjust the fit. Because every single boat tail is different. They all have different thicknesses because it's blow molded. So we have to sand them down. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. So I'm just taking sandpaper and going around the perimeter. This is going to take a few minutes, but it's not too hard. I'll be back after I get it to the point where it fits flush with this ring right here. So go ahead and do that, and then we'll be back. Okay, so mine are just touching now, so that's good. So now we can go on to step 169. That's where we're going to take the body tube. In the body tube, we need to fill the spirals. So I've already gone ahead and put my putty in there. And at this point, I have to sand it down. And I've gone ahead and worked ahead, and I've done that already. And so this one is already smooth, because our next step is we're going to put on simulated weld lines. So on the rocket, they weld the tank together, and it's going to leave a bead from the weld line. And so there's three of them. There's one around the perimeter here, there's a long one here, and they're etched onto the tube, and then there's one here. from our bag of small parts, you'll find that there's these strips of plastic, and these are what we're going to use to put these on. So there's going to be 3 of them, and one's going to go, they're going to go between the lines like this. They're going to go all the way around. So I'm going to trim it there. Better to trim it a little long, because then we can always make it shorter. Okay, so I'm going to put this between the line right there. And there's going to be one that goes here as well. So I might go, start at one corner. So always use a piece of metal to press it down so you don't stick your finger on there. Alright, so I'm going to stretch it along the line. And we're going to cut here later. I'm going to tack it down right there. I'm kind of pressing up on this piece here in the middle. Okay, so here I've got a little bit of overlap, which is perfect. Okay, so I'm going to hold it down with my knife, line those up. Okay, so now I can go around the edge and just kind of wick it through, and the capillary action will draw it underneath. Okay, so that's one, and we have another one here, and then the long one. So I'm going to go ahead and do that, and that is step 170. And then 171 is, once you get them all on, we're going to fill any gaps in our weld lines with the putty so that they look nice and smooth. So I'm going to go ahead and do this. .170 is fill in any gaps, and then the only gap I have is this small one right there. So I'll just let that dry, and then when it's dry I'll just sand it down, and I think my weld lines look pretty good. We'll go on to step 172 in the next video.